Welcome to SET Digital Roadshow 2021 Year-End Performance Review. This session will run about 45 minutes, including Q&A. Company will start the session by 30 minutes presentation, followed by 15 minutes Q&A. During Q&A, investor may leave your question in the meeting room chat box or use your raise hand function. Then we will open your microphone so you can ask the question to the company directly. May I now invite NRF Stan Produce Public Company Limited to start the presentation, please.
Thank you, and good morning and good evening wherever you are. Allow me to share screen. I'm currently in the Midwest here in the United States. It's 2:15 in the morning, so good morning. Okay, so thank you again for attending. We're going to split this presentation into 3 sections. So first section on 2021 results, the second section on a brief overview of our plans for 2022, and then the third is an important strategic direction of ours in this next 2 years. So again, as a reminder, we have a few core verticals. So ethnic foods, specialty foods, functional. We group that into specialty foods. We have plant-based, which we group into decarbonization, and then we have our ecosystem drivers, which we group into e-commerce and our own corporate investments. So for 2021, as you have probably all seen in our MD&A, we had good growth, slightly below what we expected, but we achieved 50% year-on-year growth, as well as a good jump in terms of our gross profit of 88%. SG&A did grow commensurately because of our e-commerce platform, which were basically driven by fees to Amazon. But you can also see for EBITDA as well, especially on normalized EBITDA, which grew 69%, and as well as net profit and normalized net profit. Another highlight of last year was we realized gain on 2 of our investments of more than 4 times our money, which is basically Wicked Food and GTH, our hemp business. So last year was a challenging year, as everybody knows, for logistics. Because we sell FOB, we were not dramatically affected. However, we were affected from a rescheduling of freight, and we've seen that circumstance abate over time. So in Q2, 20% of our shipments were delayed to Q3. In Q3, 15% of our shipments were delayed to Q4. And in Q4, we saw less than 5% of our revenue being delayed. COVID did have 2 very important effects, basically on our factory operations. So in Thailand, in August, for almost 5 weeks, we were operating at only 50% capacity. And then in the UK, it forced an almost 4-month delay in terms of our ability to get our plant-based factory up and running because of scheduling of our auditors. Breaking down our revenue components, we did have very good organic growth in ethnic, and I believe that in 2022, we're going to see continued growth in terms of our ethnic food groups as we focus on the UK, the United States, and Chinese market. For plant-based, we did see a slight fall. This is specifically because our revenue currently is through joint ventures, which we don't consolidate, and it's coming from a higher base, but we expect this to grow actually in 2022 and 2023. Same with functional as well. We didn't expect actually a lot of revenue to come in from hemp, even though there was a lot of interest in hemp. One of the reasons was just because of the regulatory difficulties around getting FDA approval. We expect that in the next 60 days, that's going to become a lot clearer, and I'll go to that in a moment. And we had good growth from e-commerce as well of 27%. So here you can see in terms of the past 4 quarters for specialty foods, we had very good feedback from our launch in Thailand and China for our ethnic foods business. We acquired GTH 100% in the summer of last year, which is the hemp business. And we also took a majority stake in Botany, which is a pet food company with the goal of making plant-based pet food and converting one of our factories into a specialty pet food factory. And we also planted it's about an acre of hemp CBD as our pilot farm in Khon Kaen in August of last year. And then we brought in Australis, which is like a leading cannabis company, to help us expand our hemp business here in Thailand. And they became a 25% shareholder of GTH. In plant-based, it was a very fast-moving year. And so, we became a lead investor with Univis, which has become an important partner of ours, because that led us to become the lead investor into Wicked Foods, which is now the fastest, probably plant-based brand in the world now, I think. They're going to do 30 million last year, and they're probably going to do double that this year, just from a startup perspective. In Q2, we set up our joint venture with PTT Group, called NRPT, so 50/50. And we also co-founded Conscious, in which we own 20% with Eves, one of the most famous plant-based entrepreneurs in the world. Conscious also started their manufacturing facilities in Vancouver in the end of Q4. And we also launched Nove Eats, which is our plant-based McDonald's. The reviews have been so good that we're actually going to launch this in the United States towards the summer of this year. So e-commerce, we didn't acquire as many brands as we had liked to. We actually turned down 2 brands, but as you know, we've closed Prime Labs, male supplements. We had SO Trading, which was powdered supplements, and we had vitamin gummies with WellPath. We also acquired Indeem, which is an omni-channel direct sales marketing platform in Thailand with 300,000 members. They were averaging 25 million baht a month last year, and now they're actually at 35 million baht a month and moving into this year. So we're really excited. With Indeem, we acquired them because we want them to serve as a channel for not only our e-commerce brands, but for some of our other brands that we're gonna sell into the Thai market, including hemp-based products. As you can see here, on a quarter-by-quarter basis, our revenue growth we've been doing quite well, being able to grow Q1Q since Q3 to Q4 of 28%, and then year-on-year 51%. In terms of ethnic foods, it tends to be a cyclical business where Q1 tends to be slightly softer, Q2 ramps up for summer, Q3 ramps up for winter, and then Q4 ramps up for Chinese New Year. I believe with our current strategy, we're going to smoothen that cycle out so that we can continue to achieve quarter-on-quarter growth. From a gross profit perspective, we're actually a net benefactor of the depreciated Thai baht, which basically increased our gross profit margin. And we had significant increase in gross profit margins due to the diversification in e-commerce business. So that improved gross profit margins to 42% in Q4. So as you can see here. In terms of SG&A, it did increase, and a lot of this increase was actually driven by e-commerce. That's because although there's high gross profit margins in e-commerce on sales in Amazon, we also have a large SG&A expense, which is to Amazon, for basically their 3PL as well as their revenue share. So as you can see here, there was a jump. However, as you can also see, that we also had a very large jump in terms of EBITDA as well, growing 69% year-on-year. And we believe that we will continue to grow EBITDA over this next 1 or 2 years. Excuse me. From a net profit perspective, over the course of the year, we did see a dip in terms of quarter two, and that was, as I had mentioned, 20% of our revenue was actually rescheduled to quarter three, and then that Q3 revenue was rescheduled into Q4. So basically, it impacted our net profit. We do believe, due to the abatement of the issues around shipping delays, that we should see a smoothing out of that process, as well as increased net profit growth over this next year. In terms of key financial ratios, and I know I'm flying through these slides. We only have 30 minutes, but I do want to highlight, despite COVID issues, in terms of our working capital ratios, we're quite consistent. And from a debt perspective, given our 50% growth in terms of our top line and our growth in terms of EBITDA, our debt ratios are still quite, I would say, prudent relative to our growth. We do expect to maintain a prudent leverage ratios going into 2022 as well, but with a higher growth profile. And we can go through the 2021 numbers in detail in Q&A. I would like to go through our outlook. And so the food sector, as you know, has grown year on year. And especially because of COVID, food resiliency has now been a very important issue. I would say because of the war in Ukraine, we've done a very thorough review in terms of our business. We have basically less than like 0.1% exposure to Russia. We have like one client there, which we just sent our first container. And so we don't believe, given from a raw material perspective or other impacts from an ingredient perspective or from a customer perspective, to have any impact from the Ukraine war. We do, however, expect to see the concerns around food resiliency as well as energy resiliency become a very important issue in this next year. And I feel that that is actually a net benefit to our business. From a plant-based perspective, the industry grew quite well. Despite what many of you might have read, we're still looking at about 20% CAGR. The industry could have grown faster, and one of the reasons why the industry didn't grow as fast is plant-based tends to be driven a lot by food service. So for example, in the US, if you look like at companies that are listed in the US, almost half their sales, for example, like Beyond Meat, are actually driven by food service. And so we're going to continue to see strong demand from a plant-based business, continue to be in Europe, the US, but we also see Asia to come up to play as well. Our primary markets will still continue to be the US, Europe, Thailand, and China moving forward. For 2022, from a growth drivers perspective, we're expecting to grow year on year, both organically and inorganically, around 50 to 70%, driven by organic growth in our specialty foods business. This year is going to be slightly different because we're going to see a deeper distribution focus in the United Kingdom as well as China. We're going to start using NFTs to drive marketing in North America, and our pet food factory will be up and running by Q3. And that they already have an order book of about $10 million, and so we expect to see immediate revenue coming in quarter four. From an e-commerce perspective, we actually have two deals, one actually now in closing mode, so we should be doing a filing very soon. Both in the food supplements business, but very slightly different from what we've already acquired before. We look to do a total of 5 to 6 deals over this next year. As well as our current plan is within 3 years from now, is potentially to do some form of listing here in Thailand or in the US. For plant-based, we expect to drive this through profit sharing with US with NRPT, and I'll go to a little bit into this in a moment. We also are going to focus a lot on the US markets, selling both our own products as well as Nove Eats, as well as in China as well. So we do expect to drive both our top line as well as our bottom line through profit sharing. We do see from a corporate venture capital perspective that we will continue to sell certain stakes in companies that meet our minimum return objective. So our typical minimum return in investment is around 4 to 5 times within a 5-year period. And we've already reached that with Boosted, as you all know. So we sold a stake as well as in GTH last year. These two companies, as well as some of our other companies, are meeting some of those requirements. And so what you'll continue to see is over the next 2 or 3 years, we will continue to sell some of the stakes that we have in some of these companies. I want to talk about decarbonization at the very end, because I feel this is going to be very important to our company in the next 2 years in a very significant way on both a revenue and a cash flow perspective. And so just to get a bit into 2022, from a specialty food perspective, we did announce that we've allocated 200 million baht to build a new sauce factory, which will be complete in Q4. So this is going to be an almost automated sauce factory, and it's going to be focused primarily on Europe. That is mainly due to the strong demand that we're seeing in Europe. And so we're hoping to be more competitive, and so we can sell in mass volumes into the European market. As mentioned, we also expect to see the completion of our pet food factory in Q3. So that we should see revenue hit in Q4, and then revenue from the sauce factory to hit hopefully end of Q4, but let's call it Q1 of 2023. We're going to focus on cost control just due to the uncertainty of the macro environment, as well as productivity improvements. We've got an exciting line of SKUs that we hope to introduce into Europe, US, and then into Thailand and China as well. From a distribution perspective, we're actually working really, really close now in the UK with several companies. And I think that that's going to have a material impact in terms of our growth in the UK. It's still a very large market, and we're very, very much underrepresented in the UK from a brand perspective. We do a lot from an OEM perspective, but we're very underrepresented from a brand perspective, and we feel that that's going to be a big push of ours. So if you looked at our organic growth in specialty foods last year of 26%, I think we're going to beat that for 2022. We're also going to be focusing a lot of our marketing initiatives on social media within the US and Europe, but specifically in the US. Also to use NFTs to drive our branded product sales in the US. So again, from an e-commerce perspective, the focus will still be inorganic. As I said, 5 to 7 deals. We currently have 2 in term sheets, 1 actually already in closing stage already. So you should be able to see news come across in the next 2 weeks. We're going to focus also on distribution, diversifying the channels off of Amazon and into other offline channels. We were slow, to be honest, in trying to import these products into Asia just due to some of the novel ingredients. So for example, this product, the Prime product, for example, we've been trying to import into Thailand, but because this type of product has never been sold in Thailand, it's taking a lot longer than we thought. Another key initiative for 2022 is actually improving upon our existing products and selling them in Amazon. So for example, this is like a version 2 of Prime called Prime Pro, Prime Test Pro, that's going to launch into Amazon in the next month. For plant-based, from an innovation perspective, we're going to be working with our startup portfolios as well as Conscious and our innovation centers around improving our current SKUs. And increasing the number of SKUs that we're going to sell. I'm also excited to announce, the UK facility now is ramping up production, and in the UK. Our Thailand facility should be up and running in the first half of 2023 here in Thailand. That's a joint venture with PDT Group. In the US, I'm actually here to try to acquire a US facility here in the US that will complete a big part of our strategy, which is to be able to have regionalized production of plant-based in key regions around the world. Let's see how that turns out. The Russian war obviously has made things quite tricky, but it's actually, I think it's a positive in a way from an acquisition perspective. We also plan to launch extrusion in the UK. For those of you who don't know, that's a more advanced type of textured protein, and that's what makes the Beyond have that textured feel, but it also increases the cost as well. And so this is actually something that I'm pretty excited about. So we're going to launch Alt Eatery in Q2. Alt Eatery will be a series of basically grocery and restaurant cafe style eatery concepts that we're launching in Thailand. It's 3,000 square feet. It'll carry 600 SKUs as well as coffee and desserts and food as well. If you're in Thailand, this is the main road of Sukhumvit 51 in the heart of the city. I'm very excited, actually. The food is amazingly good. I think anybody who tries it is going to be amazed. We're also planning to launch Nove Eats, our plant-based McDonald's. That's online. So there's no physical restaurant, okay? It's online only. You can actually order this on Grab here in Thailand. We're going to launch this in the US late summer of this year. So I'm pretty excited about that. And we're gonna start selling our Nove branded products in the US into food service partnerships, as well as use NFT to drive marketing across plant-based. From a growth CapEx perspective, over the next, I know we have 10 minutes now, 9 minutes, over this next year. So we plan to allocate, as you can see here, 2 billion over the next 2 years, allocated between e-commerce, plant-based, functional, and ethnic. These are primarily around the new facilities that I had mentioned earlier, for example, like the pet food facility, the new sauce facility, for example, and continued investments in hemp. So in January, we just expanded our hemp CBD fields to 50 rai. And we've just announced a joint venture with a clinic. So it's the first authorized THC cannabis clinic in Thailand. And in terms of plant-based, it's more that money is going to be continued to invest into NRPT so that we can launch our factory as well as our eatery concept in Thailand. So I want to talk about 2022 to 2023. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our transformation into a clean food tech company. And it's not something new, okay? And bear with me as I try to explain this, because this is actually completing a piece of a puzzle that we've been working on now for 3 years. So since 2018, many of you may know that we were the first movers in many things, adopting the 1.5 degree pledge. We were the first and still only the carbon neutral food factory in Thailand 2 years in a row now. We were the first to adopt the Race to Zero. We were the first of almost everything in terms of climate change over the past 3 years. And we were featured in so many media. And there was a reason why. And there's a reason why we went into plant-based. So plant-based is an efficient product to basically provide a means of subsistence. So in other words, plant-based is more efficient than animal meat, as everybody knows. However, plant-based is still a positive emissions business. And what does that mean? It means that we still got to grow, we still got to manufacture, we still got to distribute and sell, and that entire supply chain is still a supply chain, that value chain that emits carbon. So what is the difference between a carbon positive platform, a carbon negative platform, and a carbon neutral platform? So carbon neutral platform, although you reduce carbon this year, the carbon is still released back into the atmosphere. And so the only way to fight climate change, the only way, is to be carbon negative. I've got 6 minutes, so I'm going to try to be as efficient as possible in explaining this. So in other words, we want to start carbon, right, from being burnt or being consumed, farted out from cows, whatever, and being re-released into the atmosphere. And the only way you can do that is to sequester, or what they call bury, carbon permanently into the ground. Okay, and that is the only path that fights climate change. And we've been working on this. And so if you think about it, if plant-based was our midstream to downstream component, right, which is still a carbon positive value chain, agriculture is the only way that we can become carbon negative. And so what does that mean for NRF? We want to be a clean food tech company. So that means is that our supply chain positively helps the environment and promotes biodiversity. It produces carbon efficient foods in a low carbon manufacturing process. However, we employ advanced technology to reduce the carbon that is emitted from agriculture. We then take what is the waste streams or the residue of agriculture, and we permanently bury it or sequester the carbon into the ground, resulting in negative emissions or decarbonization. Okay, I've been warned. I've got 5 minutes. So let me take you through this. Okay, so let's to be super clear. Let's talk about Thailand. Okay, for those of you who are in Thailand. Thailand burns 17 million metric tons of agriculture waste streams, residue. Whether it's corn husk, rice, sugar, you name it, we burn it. Potatoes, etc. That's why over the past week, all of Thailand was red. What we can do and what we plan to do with a plant in Thailand is we're going to take that agriculture waste stream. We're going to collect it, treat it in a bioreactor, and this is actually a live site. And then what happens after we treat this is 20% of the output becomes solidified carbon. 20% of the output becomes basically liquid carbon. Now, these two things, okay, can be reapplied into our supply chain, which actually improves productivity, improves water retention, but more importantly, results in carbon emission reductions, generating carbon credits. Interestingly enough, as I said, if you ran the math with me just now, there's around a 50+% output, which is basically gas. This gas can be converted into electricity, on which we did an announcement in which we plan to mine Bitcoin with, because some of these plants are just going to be in the middle of nowhere. And so because they're in the middle of nowhere, it's just not possible to sell the electricity back to the grid. I'm very excited about this because this is our completion of our decarbonization value chain. So from a blockchain-driven community of consumers to basically our low carbon emissions food manufacturing and products, basically led by plant-based. And then now to basically our upstream decarbonization platform, where we are producing solidified carbon and liquid carbon and reapplying them into agriculture. I know this is a lot to take in the span of just a few minutes. I'd happy to field questions after this, but I can tell you this, right? In the next 3 to 5 years, we will be the only carbon negative company out there, and I believe from supermarkets to fund managers to customers, right? Everybody will be forced to decarbonize your portfolios, whether they're equity portfolios or it's a supermarket portfolio, and they're going to want to work with a company that's carbon negative, which is why we're slightly changing our roadmap. From our original roadmap was a digital transformation by 2023. It is now decarbonization for leadership by 2023 and transforming into a clean food tech company, where by 2023, we want to set up 1 negative emissions plant in US, 1 negative emissions plant in Thailand. In Thailand, I'm pretty excited. We already have teams, like I have our in-house environmental science team, engineering team, already in the north of Thailand working on this. We'll continue to focus on growing the share of plant-based revenue and profit sharing over this next 2 years. However, I do believe that both decarbonization and blockchain will represent a material impact on cash flow generation after 2023. So with that, I want to thank everybody, and then we can open the floor to questions.
On behalf of the Stock Exchange of Thailand, I would like to thank you very much, investors and NR Instant Produce, for joining the conference. Hope to welcome you all again in the next quarter. Thank you very much ค่ะ
Thank you สวัสดีครับ
Thank you